The Starr and D'Amico Show is brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. If you're looking for quality gear without overpaying, shop cheapesttshirts.ca. Huge selection for men, women, and kids. Tees, hoodies, headwear, bags, and more. Proud Montreal business. Order today, ship today, delivery tomorrow. That's cheapesttshirts.ca. Local, fast, and affordable. Brought to you by instacustoms.com. Do you need custom gear from a local Montreal business? Instacustoms.com has you covered. Custom shirts, hoodies, hats, and more made your way. Fast turnaround, great quality, and proudly Montreal-based. Check out instacustoms.com. Brought to you by Cabletel. For trusted alarm systems in Quebec and Eastern Ontario, choose Cabletel. Over 20 years of expert installation and top-tier protection for homes and businesses. Check out Cabletel.com. Email them info@Cabletel.com. It's Cabletel. Peace of mind you can count on. Brought to you by Morella's Steakhouse. Looking for an unforgettable night out? Morella's Steakhouse on Highway 132. It's just 15 minutes from Montreal, serving up premium cuts and bold flavors, and no tax on your bill. Book your table tonight at morellassteakhouse.ca. Taste excellence tonight. Brought to you by Little Bear. Give your pet the best with Little Bear Pet Supply. It's a proudly family-owned business here in Montreal for over 30 years. Chuck, Evie, and their all-star staff have you taken care of with all the top brands at the best prices, and they really care for your pets. Shop online at littlebearonline.com or visit them on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. It's Little Bear Pet Supply. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Head over to McLean's Pub, 1210 Peel Street in the heart of downtown Montreal. Great food, cold drinks, and big games on all the screens. McLean's Pub, good times and great company. There's Marco D'Amico. I'm Shaun Starr. Welcome to the aftermath of NHL trade deadline right here on the Starr and D'Amico Show, wherever you get your podcasts. And this is the week, my good man. We're going to be at Morella's on Thursday night. Coming up at 6 o'clock for a live presentation. We're also going to do our VIP draw, so you have the rest of this week, basically up until Thursday, to enter for a chance to win 2 tickets to see the Habs and Bruins at the Bell Center with you and a friend, VIP luxury transportation to and from the game, and $200 to spend at Morella's. Marco, let's dive into, the strongest takeaway from Friday's trade deadline, where General Manager Kent Hughes, if he didn't spend all of his time, he spent most of his time prior to the deadline on a trade that would have been, quote unquote, a significant deal to move this rebuild along. Obviously, they were incapable of getting it done, and the Canadiens did no moves. Now, Hughes refused to more or less expand on what that deal might have been. It's time for Starr D'Amico guessing game. What do we think here? What's our educated opinions on who Kent Hughes was likely targeting here?
So let's just clarify things, right? Because we had a lot of our fans that were watching us live as the trade deadline ended. The Canadiens weren't just on one thing, right? First of all, you have Jeff Gordon, you have Kent Hughes, both take calls during that day and reconvene, or if something gets close, like they'll both jump on a call. Like, that's how it works. The Canadiens came close to a couple of deals, not just one. And the one that went down to the wire, because as we reported, there was discussions with the Calgary Flames, but those discussions kind of died when Flames ownership didn't want to retain as much as what the Canadiens wanted. And then they circled back with Colorado, and now he is an Av. What we do know is that the Canadiens had multiple discussions on a couple of players, but one really came close. Who that player could be, anybody who tells you they know is lying.
Yeah.
Because nobody on either side, everybody in hockey is trying to find out who that team or player was that the Canadiens went down to the wire to. But from what I was told, it was supposed to be a forward in the 20s, in the age of 20s. I know that the Canadiens checked in on Ryan O'Reilly. Source close to Nashville informs me that that Nashville was for the first time taking calls in a real way on Ryan O'Reilly, and that's a player that the Canadiens have liked for a while. But I just went, for all I'm being told, I don't believe that it's a player that of that age. If they were going to make a significant trade, it was age appropriate. Though, and it's worth saying, Kadri wasn't age appropriate, but it's because the fit was going to work. if there was
Exactly.
retention.
And the key word there is significant deal. Whether we talk about Ryan O'Reilly, I mean, obviously, maybe we should start with Robert Thomas of the St. Louis Blues. That would fall under the umbrella, under the descriptor of significant deal, age appropriate, decent cap hit. Obviously, a first line, second line center, perhaps playing behind Nick Suzuki. What about that? I mean, does that kind of fit? Would you imagine that was the player that went down to the wire before Friday's deadline?
Yeah, I mean, there's also a part of this that's very PR, right? Like the Canadiens didn't have a deal in place. Like they weren't on the registrar call at 3 p.m. That was confirmed by a colleague Renaud Lavoie. So it's not like they were in the queue and something fell apart. So what happened between 3 and 4:30? Right? And so I think part of it was to properly fashion the response because fans understandably were not happy at the lack of moves at all. Especially with Patrick Laine. The expectation was that Patrick Laine was going to get traded. And from what I was told, if they did their significant trade, or if they're, in their pursuit for Kadri, for example, there was Patrick Laine involved. So it would have been a 2-bird, 1-stone kind of situation. So you have to answer to that, and you have to give hope to the fan base. So I can understand him saying, they came close on a player, and it's a thing that they're going to revisit. So, right off the bat, he wasn't talking about Kadri, because I don't think you're revisiting. I don't think the Avalanche are trading Kadri after just having acquired him, right? You get him for that, you fit him in your budget, you're good to go. In terms of players that they're looking for, players that are rare profiles. So you bring up Robert Thomas. We know that they had interest in Robert Thomas. A couple of teams had interest in Robert Thomas. I could tell you it was not very. Doug Armstrong was not taking many calls on Robert Thomas on Friday. The price did not go down. People just called. Were like, "Hey, is the price the same?" Yes. Okay, that's it. And instead, the Blues focused on trading Shen. They focused on trading Falk. There were discussions on Jordan Kyrou, but those are going to get kicked down to the summer again. So it could very well be Robert Thomas, because they were and have been in discussion with him. But I just don't know that that's the player that went down to the wire, just simply because, the Blues already had 2 deals that were in the registrar or announced right as of 3 p.m. So I think that you have to take that into consideration as well.
I'm going to tell you who I think it is. It's just a guess. I mean, even Elliot Friedman on Saturday during the second intermission in the Habs and Kings game, he had a guess. And to your earlier point, nobody knows. Nobody knows. And
the reason why no one
speculating whatsoever, so he didn't even.
The reason why nobody wants to put names out there is because the moment one person, I'm sure the person you're going to name right now, trade rumors galore.
Correct. Yes. Better me to say it than you. People take you out of context on a daily basis on all your favorite social platforms, right?
Yeah. And you'd be crazy what people do with with technology nowadays.
So, brother, here's my name, okay? And it checks every box. It goes back to Jeff Gorton talking in the summer about getting that dog player, getting that intense forward. He fits the age, he fits the contract, he fits what the Montreal Canadiens are trying to do. And I think we're starting to see maybe this team retool. I think it's Tom Wilson of the Washington Capitals. What an ad that would be. What a desired target, in my opinion, that would be for the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, the much beloved John Carlson gets moved to Anaheim when he was sleeping. I personally believe, and I have obviously no insight here, it's just my opinion. I think Alexander Ovechkin is done after this year, personally, and I think there's going to be a little retool on the fly. And how many teams right now can help the Washington Capitals, either with a couple of prospects, with some picks, whatever the case may be, and they begin to retool on the fly, as I mentioned. And I think Tom Wilson would be that desired trade target. That's the player that not a lot of people were talking about, and I think it checks a lot of boxes for Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes and what they're trying to do in this rebuild here, to move it along, as he said, to move it along.
Yeah, I mean, The issue that I have with Tom Wilson, like on paper, perfect target. Absolutely, 31 years old, turns 32 in May.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have a problem. I think he brings exactly what the Canadians are missing. But if this fan base had a problem with Nazem Kadri signed for 3 more years till he was 38, go look at Tom Wilson's contract. He signed 6.5 million.
Yes.
So just 500,000 less than Kadri. But he signed for another 5 years. He'll be 39 at the end of that. It expires in the summer of 2031.
Yeah.
You talk about age. I have no problem with him. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's exactly the persona that Montreal is missing. It's going to be expensive, and there are significant risks that could put you in a situation where he becomes another kind of Josh Anderson situation. I'm not saying he's going to drop off that hard.
Yeah.
But, it becomes an anchor at a certain point in your window of contention. So I think he's a great target. I think you're on the right path in terms of players thinking outside of the box, because I don't think the Canadians were necessarily going after a player that was heavily rumored.
That's it. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't even think he would be the most attractive piece for the Canadians on the Washington Capitals. I think maybe Dylan Strome would be probably, if you're going to blow it up, that's probably a guy that the Canadians would look at, because you can play him center, you can play him wing. He's big, signed short term, gives him a little bit of flexibility. Those are options. I had a lot of people ask me about Jason Robertson.
Yeah.
That's like, if you're talking about significant, that's significant.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was told that the Dallas Stars were not taking calls on him.
Or his name.
They took calls and they said, we don't want to trade him. Obviously, because if you're trading Jason Robertson, you have to have like an equivalent coming back, right? You have to have, if you're Dallas, it's win now. You're not going to, it's your leading scorer. You have to, or one of the leading scorers, they play flip flop between him and Hank, between him and, speaking of MVPs, get this guy on the show.
Big baby.
But yeah, so I don't think it was Jason Robertson. One name.
Give it to me. Give it to me.
One name is interesting to me is Matthew Knies.
Hey now.
Because Toronto, for example, Toronto took calls. Like, I know that Toronto took calls on Knies. I know that Toronto listened on Knies. I know that the Canadians and Toronto spoke. I would be lying to you if I knew what the exact nature of that conversation was, but I know that they had a conversation. If there was a player that I think Kent Hughes would overpay for that maybe wouldn't cost Thomas level, like Robert Thomas price point, Matthew Knies to me is the perfect missing ingredient for the Canadians at forward.
I mean, he checks so many boxes. I mean, he would jump at the top of my list, Marco. He would be at the top of my list. I mean, Jason Robertson's hard to knock off personally, but
the thing is, Jason Robertson would have to come with a new contract. It would probably be over $12 million.
Yeah.
If he wants to extend in Montreal, right? Like, there's so many things that factor into that. Whereas, the Canadians going and looking at a guy like Robert Thomas, he signed at $8.1 million for 5 more years. Well, have you seen Matthew Knies' contract?
Yeah.
Just an absolute steal of a contract. 100%. And I think he still hasn't finished, really hitting his peak. And it's unfortunate the Canadians could have had Matthew Knies. They chose Logan Mailloux instead. But that was then in the draft of 2021. I feel like that's also a player that makes a ton of sense for them in terms of going to get a player in the 20s. If you're going to overpay for someone, you're going to overpay for that. I will say, Shaun, I think that makes a ton of sense for me in terms of that kind of asset value, that kind of player that maybe not a lot of people were talking about was kind of out there. I think that's Kent Hughes. Like, Kent Hughes is the type, like, I'll bring it back because I know people are really tired of me talking about the Noah Dobson situation. But the moment the Canadians heard that Noah Dobson was available through the grapevines, they pounced.
Right.
The moment that they saw the trade rumor that Phillip Danault was available, they pounced. I'm wondering the name of Nyes was not put out silly willy, right? When it comes to me, like I get my information from the people I talk to in hockey, agents, players, coaches, execs, etc. When you're the Pierre LeBruns, when you're the Elliot Friedmans, just to open up, the back of the world a little bit in this, they get they obviously do the same work that I do, but because of their platform, they also sometimes get information given to them.
Yeah.
Specifically to get it out there because of their
Yes.
platform,
Correct.
because
Spread the message.
it will, continue and propagate because of second and third levels of media, right? Matthew Nyes' name put out there is not by chance.
Right.
I'm not saying he's getting traded absolutely, but remember last summer when the Dallas Stars were thinking about trading Jason Robertson?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be a very realistic thing this summer that Jason Robertson is going to be traded. I think I just don't see. They're going to have to do some major surgery in that lineup to make it fit. Maybe they trade Lyubushkin, and maybe that's a target for Montreal for bottom pair right shot. But I still feel like Robertson trade is coming. Well, I feel like when you start hearing rumblings of a player like this, like I heard rumblings of Robert Thomas in October, there's a chance that player could be available. That would be an incredible get, but a very costly one at that.
I got two more thoughts before we wrap up today's discussion.
Not 32?
No, not 32. That's trademarked.
So that's going to be like the sidebar of our podcast now. Two thoughts.
Hey, listen, that's only 2 pennies. When they talked about revisiting in the summertime after Friday's deadline, does that mean the player's going to be a potential UFA? I mean, would we read into that language?
No.
That it's someone to revisit in the summer, or is that inheriting an already done deal with another organization? How do you interpret that?
A lot of the times, like I'll give you an example that I've the Canadiens had checked in on Phil Deneau last summer just to kind of see what was going on. They had checked in on Noah Dobson at last year's trade deadline to see what was going on. So there's always like seeds that are put in place for the summer, and the Canadiens do their best work. I think we can all agree in the summer.
Yeah.
Especially as buyers, I would say. So I don't think it's an unrestricted free agent. I don't. And the fact that he said that the players were willing to lift their clauses for Montreal and the conversations they were having, it was also kind of interesting to me. Is not something that was lost on me. So, but we're definitely going to be able to circle back on this, probably in May and June. But for all intents and purposes, I was told the Canadiens had a couple of things on the burner, not simply just one. They just went like a lot of these things fell off. A lot of these things fizzled. There was one specific player that they went all the way to the end on. So we'll see. We'll see definitely what could happen. But I'm willing to bet here, and this is the information that I have. The player in question was a forward in their prime in the age range of this team's core.
And so that leads me in perfectly, I guess, to the last thought to get your take on is the forward position player, considering where the Canadiens are in terms of rankings, shorthanded and in goal prevention, and still, a top 3 team in the Atlantic Division now. They got a little help on Saturday night after that crazy comeback win over the LA Kings to wrap up the Cali trip. You surprised that it's not another defenseman? I guess a significant player wouldn't be a 5th or 6th defenseman, I guess, right? That's what it falls into.
Correct. And I also feel like I can also say the Canadiens did try on defense. They did. I'm not at liberty to say right now because obviously I'd get in trouble for it. But there was something that they thought was getting close that fell through on defense, I believe, as well. So I can't confirm that. I don't have a second source on it, so I'm not reporting it, but it's definitely, I feel like, if we have this conversation again in June, I wouldn't be surprised if the Canadiens also added another defenseman. But for those that want to stick around for tomorrow's episode, there could be another reason why the Canadiens didn't necessarily have to get another defenseman, and we'll definitely be able to break that down because sometimes the best deals you make are the ones you don't.
There's Marco D'Amico. You can follow him at M and D'Amico, one half of Starr and D'Amico. If you like what you've heard, what you've listened to, and what you've watched, give us a like. Hit the subscribe button. It costs nothing and helps the channel grow. Thanks for your ongoing loyalty. And don't forget, you can support us by supporting all of our sponsors at Cheapest T-Shirts, Insta Customs, The Real Deal. That is McLean's Pub on Peel, the best at home security at Cablatel, and the steakhouse of choice for Starr and D'Amico. That's Morella's, and we'll see you there Thursday night live at 6 p.m. Good stuff as always, Marco. Looking forward to our topic as we take a look at what's going on Laval. So hit that notification button and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, man.
Have a good one, everybody.